In the last video, I gave my predictions for the Western Conference standings come the end of the season, and today I'm going to go through the Eastern Conference. If you did miss the Western Conference video, be sure to jump on my channel and go back and view that one as well. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below as to regarding this video, who you think will finish where in the Eastern Conference, who's your favorite team, and how do you think that season will go, as well as be sure to subscribe while you're at the channel, like this video, and then turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any future videos, because I'll have a lot more coming, a couple more before the season starts, hopefully as well, in a couple of days or just as the season's starting. So be sure to make sure you're not missing any of that content as it's coming out. But let's get into the Eastern Conference standings. Coming in at 15th and finishing bottom of the Eastern Conference standings, I have the Washington Wizards. They're just a team that seems to be really lacking any sort of core to build around. There's question marks over basically every player in their outfits. Their best player is probably Kyle Kuzma, and you would imagine he'll be requesting a trade come the trade deadline, just as a case of he wouldn't match with the rebuilding timeline of the rest of the roster, as he'll be looking to win now, essentially, after he won the championship with the Lakers back in 2020. And so he's spoken about how he wants to get back, and he's such a good player and such a kind of plug and play player. He can just fit in so many different teams, and so many contenders will be after him. So I would imagine there's a world where the Wizards trade him, try and get some draft capital as well to help build their future. But who knows what Jordan Poole's going to look like this year. Alex Sarr was the second overall pick. They'll be excited to see what he can do in the league, but how will it translate? There was even still question marks over that, especially given it is regarded as quite a weak draft class as well, this previous one gone. So how will that play out? The rest of the team, there's just no one you look at and go, that's a foundation block for the Wizards for sure. It's all question marks, and as a result, I just think it'll be another tough season for the Wizards, and so they'll end up finishing 15th. In at 14th, I have the Brooklyn Nets. They traded Mikal Bridges in the offseason. It feels as though they've made that decision. They're going for the rebuild phase, whereas they were previously seemingly in a stage that I would say the Hawks and the Bulls also find themselves in, where they weren't quite rebuilding, but also weren't pushing for the playoffs. So in this awkward middle ground, seems as though they've made that decision that they will tank, for lack of a better word, and focus on bringing in the youth. And this season will just be a bit of a struggle. I can see them losing a ton of games. I've got them in 14th as expected. I think to match that moniker, they'll just be hoping Cam Thomas can really find some consistency in his shot and his scoring. We all can see how great it is. It seems as though every year there's at least a 4-game patch where he will be one of the best scorers in the league. The Nets will be wanting him to find some more consistency with that and try and do it over the course of a full season. Maybe not always to that level, but just making sure those lower games that he does have, rather than being in single digits or low teens, maybe he can, like a bad game for him is say 15 points. He can get up to averaging in the 20s for them with very few players to take shots away from him. I think that can be a real option. Hopefully Ben Simmons is back fit this season. I think it's kind of paramount that he just stays healthy. I think that's what he struggled with the most recently. That's what has kind of made things a lot worse, I would say. Had he been fit and been able to play, I think a lot of the 76ers drama would have just blown over, but the constant back issues he's had, and the mental health challenges as well, he referenced and spoke about coming off the issues at the 76ers. Hopefully he's been able to work through those. He's feeling fit and healthy according to himself and the trainers. He's as good as he's basically ever been, and so that's exciting. And if he can stay fit for the full season, which as a massive Ben Simmons fan, I really hope he does and can prove some doubters wrong, that'll be a big boost for the Nets this season. But they'll just be looking to try and bleed in some of the youth, hopefully be fit for Ben Simmons and have Cam Thomas find some consistency. that'll be their big focus this year. But I can't see it being much more than a 14th seed for them this year. Coming in at 13th, I've got the Detroit Pistons. They were horrific last year. They lost, 27 games in a row very early on in the season. I expect them to be a much better outfit this season. I expect Cade to make quite a big jump as well. Definitely wouldn't be shocked if he was one of those injury replacement all-stars this coming year, or at least in the conversations. I imagine he'll be in the conversations for most improved player as well. And so I think that will be big for the Pistons. You look at the likes of Jaden Ivey, how will he fit in this year? He seemed initially to be that clear number 2 guard with Cade Cunningham, but that's not quite eventuated the way we probably all thought it would. So how does that play out? I just think they'll still struggle, but this year I think they'll be able to do a lot better. I don't think they'll quite be competing for like the play-in tournament. To be honest, I think that'll be the bridge too far, but I can see them being a bit of a separator from the Nets and the Wizards right down at the bottom. They'll find themselves in that kind of middle ground, I would imagine. I think the front office and the coaching staff probably just need to work out, similar to some of the other teams in the East. I feel like it's quite a common issue, just working out who are the core players we're going to build the team around. The Pistons know Cade's one, but what's the rest of it kind of look like? They've got a ton of centers, it feels like, and other pieces that could be good but haven't quite broken out in a few years. And so I think that's what this season will really be about, is getting Cade on back to being the franchise player they were hoping to draft when they drafted him number 1 overall, and then just seeing what other pieces around him are core foundation pieces and who maybe will be looked to move on once newer draftees come in or potential free agent signings. So that's what this year is about, and that's why I've got them in 13th. This season, I expect the 12th seed to be the Chicago Bulls. I mean, they've just one of the teams I referenced just before, and kind of being an in-between. They're often in the play-in, but then rarely actually are able to win and get through that, but it means they're never really high up in the lottery, and so they're just this awkward in-between. They're actively trying to get rid of Zach LaVine, but his contract is so large for what the production you would get from him that no one's really willing to trade for him, and so they're just that middle ground of what do they kind of do? They were able to move on from DeMar DeRozan, which was always going to be the easier contract to trade compared to Zach LaVine. It's just, with Zach, it's just tough because he's a probably number 2 option on like a playoff team, number 3 option on a contender, but he's on a number 1 player contract. And so that's always going to be tough for teams in working out who can actually trade for him. I think he's still got 3 years left on it as well. So any team that trades for him is committing to paying him a fair bit of money for quite a long time. And then what else can they do? Lonzo is back in preseason, and that is just such a great thing to see for sports in general. The issues he had, it was really in doubt whether he would actually even be able to play again. So to see him come back, that's massive for the Bulls and seeing what they can do, because he was a really big player for them in that first season he was there. And when they were able to, I think it was the year they finished as the 1 seed, or at least very close to it, he was massive for him. And so him being back on the court will be big. It will just be about, can they get rid of Zach LaVine? I think will be the biggest thing. How does Lonzo look being back? Can Kobe White continue to progress as he did last year? He took quite a big jump. What is their rookie, Martin Buzelis? I think that's right. Correct me in the comments below if I'm wrong. But how does he look? How can he fit in? I've heard pretty decent things. I haven't watched too much of the Bulls in preseason, but from all accounts, he's looked all right. So that'll be what they'll be focused on. And I guess also, where does Patrick Williams actually fit into this side? I mean, they're paying him $90. He's on $90 million, which is quite a hefty contract for a player who ultimately hasn't proven or done much. And so they'll be wanting to see him take a proper jump. I mean, he's been regarded as quite a good defender, and that was his strength, but can he at least get to the point where he's a respectable, above average, say, 3-point shooter and provide some a bit more of a dynamic offense for the Chicago Bulls? Because Lonzo will be able to feed him. Lonzo's playmaking is great, so he'll have those opportunities. Can he take advantage of them? I would imagine as well this season, if they could move on from Vooch, they really would. He's kind of in an awkward spot. There's some teams that need centers, but are they going to be willing to pay Vooch the money he's on? I want to say he's on like $20 million a year, potentially for a couple more years. Just both in terms of the salary, will they be wanting to pay that amount to him? But also, what is it going to take to trade for him? Are there teams that have the draft picks available, which is what you would imagine the Bulls would be after, and a player earning that amount that they'd be willing to let go for that for Vooch to come in? So it'll be interesting to see if they can move on from him. I imagine they will. But yeah, the Bulls, I just hope for their fans' sake they at least properly commit to a direction and trying to go that rebuilding stage. I hope they don't get stuck and have another season in that kind of middle ground where they're just not progressing, because they've not gotten any closer to being a contender, and very soon you would imagine them getting jumped by the Pistons and the Nets and potentially even the Wizards. If the Wizards get their shit together pretty quickly, there's a world where the Bulls end up being one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in the Eastern Conference. But next season, I think they'll do enough to finish in 12th. Just missing out on the play-in tournament, I have the Charlotte Hornets, and this year, I think it's for them, they'll just be hoping LaMelo stays fit, because that'll be a massive boost for them. They can definitely contend for the play-in spots, I think, if LaMelo stays fit for the full year. Really build a partnership with Brandon Miller, because they're definitely two foundational pieces that you can see being crucial to the franchise for a long time to come. And so that's what they'll really be focusing on. What can they then do around it? How do they build those pieces out? They can slowly work that out. But as long as they've got LaMelo on the court, they'll be just looking to see that him progress and hopefully be in all-star form, which he was not last year. I think the year before was when he made the all-star team. And so they'll be hoping he gets back to that, and hoping Brandon Miller just continues to progress. He had a really good rookie year. Can he back that up with a second season with improvement? That's what the Charlotte Hornets will be at. I think they'll just be one of those teams, probably a team you kind of just watch the highlights of, because you just tune in for what those two players are doing. There won't be too much else outside of that you're really looking to worry about. I think that now they've got those two franchise players, they could potentially look at seeing what's around to acquire more established names in the game, try and slowly build up the standings. But that's probably more something they'll look at in the off season. And next year, I think they'll just finish in that 11th seed, just outside of the play-in tournament. The Toronto Raptors are the team I have coming in as the 10th seed and the first team within the play-in tournament. I think they did so well to acquire a core that they can really look to build around with Scotty Barnes. He took another jump last year. They'll just be looking for that to progress. I think without Pascal Siakam there for a full season, he'll really be able to take some of the shots that were going to Pascal and the touches. Scotty Barnes looks ready to be able to take that real number one role on, and as the Raptors slowly look to build on it, I think RJ Barrett will be really good this upcoming season. I think not having the same pressure in Toronto that he had in New York when basically the whole franchise was just had their entire hopes and dreams on his shoulders and expecting him to be the number one guy. I don't think that's quite where he'll fit in the league. I don't think he'll ever really be that number one guy in a championship team. But I think as a versatile wing playing next to a Scotty Barnes and also his teammate from New York, Manuel Quickly, I think those two will be really exciting to watch. I think they'll be good. They're a very just like stable team. I think they've done their rebuild quite well. They've got their franchise guy in Scotty Barnes. They've got good pieces around him with some good upside as well. And quickly in RJ Barrett, because I think they can both progress quite quickly with no pun intended. Both are up there relatively high in the betting odds for the most improved player, and I think that's quite valid. RJ Barrett will definitely be one of the dark horses for that award. I wouldn't be shocked if he has a breakout year to be able to get it. And so I think the Raptors could be quite an entertaining watch. I don't think they've got the top end talent to quite compete with the teams above them yet. I think Scotty Barnes himself is definitely on the level of some of the team's best players higher up, but RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley as the second and third best players aren't quite at the level of those other teams, which is why I've got them in 10th. But I think they'll be quite a fun and exciting watch this upcoming season, and I think they'll prove to be competitive in most games as well. They won't be an easy beat for sure. In 9th, I have the Kings of being 500. I have the Atlanta Hawks coming in. They're just seemingly always going to finish a season 41-41. It just feels like the way things go. Their team in itself, I think without DeJounte, at least it gives a clearer picture, I think, as to what they can do moving forward. That experiment didn't quite work out, which when they gave away so many picks for him, it's definitely a struggle for them. But Trae Young's good enough to get a team in a play-in. He's an unbelievable scorer and playmaker. So when he's healthy, you're going to have a top offense in the league, pretty much guaranteed. The stats show that. And so they'll be good. They'll make that play-in. It'll just be what can the guys around them do to actually get them to progress from there. Can Jalen Johnson make the jump that a lot are projecting? He's the second favorite behind Wemby in the most improved player bets, odds. That was the word I'm looking for. He's the second favorite for that award. Zachary Risher. I want to say it's a pretty tough name to pronounce, but the number one pick that they had, how can he progress? What can he do and bring to the side? He's in quite a fortunate situation, I would say, because a lot of the pressure this year for the Hawks is on Trae Young. We've seen him be so good offensively. They made that Eastern Conference Finals run pretty early on into his career, but now how things are, it's kind of wavered. He's not a good defender, which he was never going to be. Those smaller guys just really aren't ever. They just struggle with the wingspan, and it takes a real special player of that size to be a top defender. And so the team will be looking for him to try and minimize how much of a negative he is. Like, can't be a straight cone. On the defensive side of the ball, you need to actually try and occasionally stay in front of your man. You can't just get blown by all the time. But also, he has his limitations, and what can the rest of the team do around that? But feels as though this is a massive season for the Atlanta Hawks, because if this season kind of goes the same way as the other seasons, you then imagine there'll be conversations internally about what to do with Trae Young. Can they trade him to the likes of a Spurs, who gets rumored a lot? CP, this might be his final season, so will they look to bring in Trae Young? Then the Hawks can get maybe some of their picks back, or all of their picks back from the DeJounte Murray trade. That would help them. Or what do they do with DeAndre Hunter, Clint Capella, and Onyeka Okongwu? I'm butchering it with namesake, but I felt like that was close. Having such a bad day for it. But what do those players look like? Because they've been on the roster for quite a few years now. None of them have really progressed in a way that a lot of people hoped. They seem to just be flying under the radar. I think those three players for me, just because it started off as when the Hawks weren't going well, John Collins was the guy to be moved. And then they brought in DeJounte Murray. So then when that wasn't working, it was, okay, well, let's move on from DeJounte Murray. And so those three players have kind of just stayed there, not really progressed in a way you would expect or would want them to have by now. And so they're not quite young prospects anymore either. Like, I'm pretty sure DeAndre Hunter is 27 now. And so he's at that point where he should be in the prime of his career, but he hasn't made any real jumps. He's an adequate player. I think he's good. He's a good defender. He can hit a three. Like, he can do that. But when the team's struggling so much, you would want more from him. That center position, it just always felt every season, it's kind of like, is this the year that Clint Capella becomes the backup? And then it never happens. And it's not necessarily feeling like because he's standing out. It's more that Double O just isn't quite doing enough to get in. And so I think this is a big year for the Hawks, and I've got them finishing in 9th. It would take a big leap for them to finish higher, I think. I'd be more inclined I'd find it easier to believe they'll finish lower and miss the play-in altogether than finish higher and make the playoffs without needing the play-in. So yeah, that's how I think the Hawks will go in 9th, but they'll be a team to watch because they've got real blow-it-up potential, I think. I said the Atlanta Hawks have blow-it-up potential, and I think that same logic applies to the Miami Heat, who are the team I have finishing in 8th this upcoming season. They just never really seem to take the regular season too seriously. It just always seems as though they wait till the playoffs, and they've been able to make a couple of runs to the finals, but it feels as though their luck essentially kind of runs out when they get to those final teams. And so this year, if it doesn't go right and it kind of looks the same as all other seasons have, you can see a world where Tyler Hero moves on, maybe Jimmy Butler moves on, because there's talk of that as well, because I think he's coming up for an extension. I think this might be his last year from memory, or he's got one more. And so what do they do with that? They'll be hoping Bam can really take a big jump offensively. We know how good he is defensively. Everyone can see it. He was up there in DPOY voting last year. He'll be up there this year. And so there's no questions about that, but they still lack scoring. It's their biggest issue, and it has been for multiple years now. And it's not something I feel like they've really addressed it all either, which is the struggle. They've got Tyler Hero, who can be really good and is a good second option, but when Jimmy's not there the whole season, or he's not necessarily at the playoff level and that real all-NBA level that we know him to be at in those important games or in the playoffs, when he's not there all the time in the regular season, I don't know Tyler Hero's been able to show he can step up and still carry the Heat to wins, and same with Bam Adebayo. I don't think he's done that, so that's what the Heat will be needing this season, I think, is just to be able to, one of those two guys, to build some more offensive consistency, I think, and really show out from there, or for Jimmy Butler to step it up the whole regular season. Because if they take it seriously, then a core of Bam, Butler, and Tyler Hero, with Eric Spoelstra as the coach, I think they could be quite a high seed. I can see them finishing outside the play-in, finishing in actual playoff spots, I wouldn't put them in the full contender bracket, but really set up to cause some damage come the playoffs. But it just feels as though the sense I get from it is just it'll be another season in that 8th, in that play-in tournament. Hope they win that, and then just hope they can make another miracle run from the playoffs and through the playoffs. But I just don't. You can only go to that well so many times, and you'll turn it on in the playoffs without making key improvements before it just runs out and you need to reevaluate your squad. And this feels like it'll be a year similar to the Hawks, where the Heat really have to make some tough decisions, I think. They made it to the Eastern Conference Finals last year. Not many expected it. They made it to the finals of the in-season tournament as well. In 7th, I've got the Indiana Pacers. I think they will be one of the most fun teams to watch this year. I think Siakam, Toppin, with Halliburton being able to distribute, that Miles Turner there, Nembhard, they've just got such a fun squad that they'll be really entertaining to watch. But the thing that they struggled with last year is something I expect them to struggle with this year again, and that's defense. I'm just not sure who that real point of attack defender is that can lock someone down when they need to in the clutch. I just don't think they've got that player. Miles Turner's a really good rim protector. He's probably the ideal center for most teams across the board. Siakam's definitely a capable defender and can hold it down, but it's in that kind of 1 through 3 range that I'm just not sure whether they're able to have as I said, point of attack defender who can lock a player down. And throughout the regular season, you need that. And then even more so in the playoffs, I think last year, momentum carried them a bit. I think they kind of went on that Heat-esque run that you kind of come out of nowhere. No one really saw it coming. They were very fortunate as well through injuries in the playoffs, and that's not something you can bank on to happen again this year. And so I just can see a world where they'll be really entertaining to watch. They'll probably have quite high scoring games as well, but just not sure they've got the defensive capabilities to really compete with the teams further up the tails. But they'll be good to watch, and they'll just be hoping that Haliburton and Siakam can really continue to build their partnership as well, and Haliburton can keep making the jump, and then just seeing where the rest of the team kind of fit in, who can make leaps from there. What's Benedict Matherin's role as well? I think that'll be one thing that this season could really prove fruitful for them if they can work that out. But we'll just have to wait and see in that regard. Their primary part will be focusing on building the Siakam and Haliburton connection, and I think it'll be strong enough to get them in that 7th spot this upcoming season. Making it into the playoffs will be the Orlando Magic. I just think they're a really good side. They've got quite a good timeline, I would say, in the fact of Paolo is their best player. He's still young, but he's incredible. And they've got some veteran presence in the likes of KCP that they brought in, who can be a good defender, hit the 3 as well reliably, so that him and Jalen Suggs in a backcourt can be really interesting. They'll be super good defensively, and so that can provide a lot for him. Having Jonathan Isaac as well in the side defensively, that's going to be exciting to watch. I'm anticipating that Franz Wagner really is able to return to his previous shooting form, because that's something that really dropped last year. He just couldn't quite get it together. I think this year he'll be able to bounce back and play at the level we know he can play at. Paolo will likely take another jump as well. Just the way he played in the playoffs, it just seemed like he was ready for that moment. And so I expect that to really carry through, and the confidence he would have gained from that to take him through the regular season. And I think he'd be a real shot at like an All-NBA third team and like an all-star level player this season. I wouldn't be shocked at all to see him achieve those. And the Magic will be a good side. They'll be interesting just how they balance it, because the fruitful combination of their youthful stars with some experienced vets on the side. I believe they've still got Gary Harris in the side as well, who's a good vet, has been around the team and can really help provide just some experience and the continued learning curves for them. And so it'll be exciting. I think their biggest focuses will be getting Franz Wagner back to form. I think that's one of the biggest things, because I think the Paolo thing doesn't even need to be a focus, because I think that would just be a natural progression. Getting Franz in form will be something they'll really focus on, because that's massive for the side. Making sure Jalen Suggs is really able to keep that defensive point of attack nature. What's the phrasing I'm looking for? Just really keep up the defensive effort and quality that he showed last year. It felt like it was a big jump for him last year in that side. If it wasn't something, as far as I'm aware, he was really known for coming into the league. So when he took that jump, it caught a lot of us by surprise, but it was great to see, because it was something, it felt like a player going, I'm not going to be the number one option on this side. That's not going to be my role. What will my role be? And how can I get the most out of that? And it felt like what he did. They've got the lingering talks of his contract. Seeing reports that apparently he's after the realm of $30 million a year, which is a lot of money for a guy who a year ago, we weren't really sure where he would fit in on the Magic, and you knew he'd be a player that would stay around the league, but to what level? He took a big jump, and that's great for him. The Magic will be wanting him to really back that up with another great season and try and improve things like his 3-point shooting and getting to an adequate level where he can be reliable on both sides of the ball. So that's what I think they'll be really looking to build on. If there was a team that I could see in the East making a kind of Pacers or a Heat-esque run from previous seasons, I think it would be the Magic. I think they've got everything required to make a deep playoff run. If they can string it together, they definitely could be dangerous there. But I think to start off with, they'll make it into the playoffs in that 6th spot. I expect the 5th seed this season to belong to the Cleveland Cavaliers. I expect Donovan Mitchell to continue to be one of, if not the best shooting guard in the whole league. I think they'll continue. The Cavs will really be hoping they get a bounce back year from Darius Garland, and because if not, where does he then fit into the side? Will they look to move him on? Potentially talks of moving on Jared Allen as well if Evan Mobley can progress and play that center role continuously. How can he improve offensively as well will be a big question for the Cavs, I think, going forward into this season. You can see how good he is defensively. He's got that wingspan required. He's got the height. He's versatile. He can guard most players on the court. And so if he can move into that center role consistently, maybe they'll look to put a package together for another all-star out there if they can, or a top-level player if they can move on Jared Allen and Darius Garland. Maybe, I think you could probably not give away both of those for it, but a player like a Brandon Ingram, maybe, I could see a world where they trade for him that kind of level, maybe a bit higher. They could look for if someone's moving on, they might buy in. But I think they'll finish in 5th. They've got, as long as they can stay healthy, it'll be just about their 3 keys. I think this season is Darius Garland bouncing back and trying to prove to play at that all-star fringe level he was at a couple years ago. That's what they'll be hoping he can try and get back to. What jumps can Evan Mobley make offensively? That'll be a big deal for them. And then just staying healthy. I think they're their 3 keys this season. If all of those happen, there's definitely a world where they finish higher than 5th in the standings. They can definitely be towards the top of those, especially if some of the other teams struggle with injuries and have some other issues. They're a team that can really make a jump higher up the standings. But I've got them finishing in 5th, and yeah, I think it'll largely be down to Donovan Mitchell as well, I imagine. Coming in at 4th is a team that entire season I think will be dictated by injuries, and that's the Philadelphia 76ers. They'll be more worried about being healthy come the playoffs. They've been a good regular season side before and then struggled in the playoffs. They've said they're not going to play Joel Embiid in back-to-back games, and so that's something they're trying to keep him fit come the playoffs. I'm not sure that's even going to work, to be honest, because it does feel as though it's a lot of not freak injuries, but just kind of it doesn't often feel as though it's a fatigue kind of issue. Sometimes players just are injury prone, and so there's not too much you can kind of do beyond just hoping that they stay fit. But if they can keep Joel Embiid fit and Paul George can stay fit, they're going to be a tough team this season. I can see them even finishing higher than 4th if they're able to do that. But for them, their season will be all about the playoffs. That's when everything will matter. What can they make a conference finals run, which they still haven't done with Joel Embiid in the side, and that's been where they've really struggled. And I do wonder what happens if they have another season where they go out in the 1st or 2nd round, Joel Embiid's injured. What are you thinking then if you're either the front office or a fan? Because at that point, sure, you've had years and years of experiences and evidence to show that Joel Embiid won't be the number one guy to take you all the way. And so you've tried it with various different lineups. You've had Jimmy Butler and Ben Simmons. You've had Ben Simmons, JJ Redick in that side. When you then had Tyrese Maxey last year, you've had James Harden in the side. You've tried all these different things throughout Joel Embiid's career there. If you have another year after you brought Paul George in and you struggle, where do you go from there? What do you then look at? Because there may be a question of maybe you just start looking more at building around Tyrese Maxey. Maybe that's what you're trying to do, and that way you don't need to necessarily rebuild, but you can retool and just go from there. Because another season where Joel Embiid's injured in the playoffs and they can't make the conference finals, it would just be insanity to not make any changes after that. But throughout the regular season, I think they've got enough quality in their side that they'll be able to finish it in the top 4 as that 4th seed. And so that's what will help them. I mean, you just hope if they do have injury issues, hopefully they're just at least spread out. So you always have 2 of Maxey, George, and Embiid on the court, or at least in the playing. You hope that for their sake, but it'll be interesting to see how it works out and how they go. It's just, as I've said and reiterated multiple times, for the Sixers, they're great. They look like they'll be a great side. You just have to assume that they'll be healthy and make your predictions on that, but that's the number one concern. Kicking off the top 3 in the Eastern Conference standings, I have the Milwaukee Bucks. I expect this year to be a massive bounce back year. I think Giannis will come in with a real point to prove. He'll definitely be up there in MVP conversations. I think this year I expect him to really go back to that MVP form he's had previously. I think Dame as well will fit in way easier this year. I think having that season under the belt, he had a lot of off-court things he was trying to work through, moving. I think he was going through a divorce as well. All those things just take away from your ability to perform on the court. There's too much stress there that players and sportsmen and athletes aren't inhuman. Then they can't just turn it all those stresses off, and when they pick up a basketball, that doesn't all go away. Those stresses and the mental fatigue of dealing with all those things will still hang around and will still have an impact. So hopefully this year he's kind of put a lot of those to bed in last year, and he can just focus on the basketball, because Dame and Giannis feels they just are too good of players to not have it be better than it was last year. So I expect it to be exciting to watch. I would have them probably just outside the contenders range. I'd say there's probably 5 contenders in my opinion, but if I was to make the list of 6, then they'd probably be that sixth team to get added in. But I think they'll be really good, and it'll just be built around how well can Dame and Giannis build that connection and really play off each other this year. That's what it'll be about. And the regular season will probably be a bit more formality and just focusing on those things. Between Dame and Giannis, you'll just get a lot of wins. They'll be able to carry them to a lot of wins through beating sides, especially those lower down the standings. They should be able to just not have to be at their top form to get past those. And then come the playoffs, hopefully they've got a rhythm. They know what they're looking at and going from there. And so I think the Bucks will finish in that 3rd spot of the Eastern Conference standings. The team I have finishing 2nd in the Eastern Conference standings are the winners of the offseason. In my opinion, it is the New York Knicks. They're just such a well-built side, you would argue, based on fit and everyone's ability for their roles and how the team's cohesion looks. On paper, them and the Celtics are the 2 best for that in the entire league, it seems. And so they've done amazing in the offseason, the players they've brought in. I think Cat will be exciting to watch. There'll definitely be a adjustment period with that, but I think he's just a much easier player then some others to just fit in, just kind of playing that power forward role, you would imagine, getting those threes kicked out to him from Brunson or potentially Mikel as well. Maybe they're able to play Cat at the 5, and then they have a lineup of Brunson, Hart, Anunoby, Mikel, and Cat. Probably Anunoby playing the 4, Mikel playing the 3. That'll be a big thing for them, how they can do that. They'll probably try those lineups. Maybe they'll go with those lineups at the death, because just so many good defenders in that side. Plus, they've got shooting. I would anticipate Mikal Bridges' shooting isn't as bad as the preseason games suggested. I think he has seemingly changed his jump shot. There must have been reasons behind it. Players don't just do that for no reason. And so if it isn't working to start with, he may just deviate back to what has worked in previous seasons. And so I just think they'll be too good. And the thing is, they won't be reliant on Mikal Bridges to be that outstanding shooter all the time. When you've got a big like Karl Anthony Towns, if one of your guards or wings aren't shooting to the level you'd always want, you've got him there who can. And so Brunson will be as good this year as he was last year, you would imagine. Last year didn't feel like a freak season, even though it was such a big improvement. It didn't feel like it came out of nowhere. It kind of felt like, oh, okay, this feels sustainable. And so you expect it would. I mean, the Villanova boys have that cohesion. The team culture will be up there. Obviously, losing Dante DiVincenzo is massive for them. Not having Julius Randle as well, I think will be tough for him, because he was just such a pivotal player in that side over recent years. But Cat will be great. The players they've brought in, I think, will fit in well. Deuce McBride looked really good in preseason, so you think he'll be able to play a bit more of a role. And so I think they'll be good to watch, and I would have them as one of the real contenders this upcoming season. In a shock to absolutely no one, I have the Boston Celtics finishing as the top seed in the Eastern Conference this upcoming year. They're just such a good side. We saw it when they made when they won the championship last year, just how good they are. The thing is, they also it's not a case of where they'll just be complacent as well either. It just seems like there's still so many question marks on individual players, like Jason Tatum having not winning the finals MVP and the narrative that came around that, and then not really playing in the Olympics, and now people questioning how good is he and what happens there. I think that'll light a fire under him, and he'll come out with a real point to prove this year and show just how good he is, and that it is his team still. And Jaylen Brown may have won finals MVP and played great, but Jaylen Brown is still the Robin to Jason Tatum's Batman. And then we've got basically the rest of the Justice League and Derek White, Drew Holiday, and Kristaps Porzingis around him. That obviously really helps. And so they'll just be a great team to watch. The question is, how many games will they really win? Can they win over 65? Possible. I wouldn't be overly shocked if they were 67-15. Like, I can definitely see that being their record this upcoming season. Maybe it drops a bit and they do kind of as a team focus a bit more on just getting through to the playoffs and getting to that point. If Jason Tatum might come out with really gunning for, say, like an MVP caliber season, and by doing so, it can alleviate some of the pressure on the others to maybe not need to exude so much energy and throughout the regular season. But they're just going to be too good. I think I'd be shocked if, barring injuries, I'd be shocked if they didn't finish as the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. And then they're obviously a contender and definitely the favorites to go back to back, I would say. That has been my predictions for the Eastern Conference standings for the upcoming season. Just to recap, from 15th to 1st, 15th, I've got the Washington Wizards. 14th are the Brooklyn Nets. 13th, I have the Detroit Pistons. 12th, I have the Chicago Bulls. 11th, Charlotte Hornets. 10th will be the Toronto Raptors. 9th, I have the Atlanta Hawks. 8th, the Miami Heat. 7th, I have the Indiana Pacers. 6th, the Orlando Magic. 5th, the Cleveland Cavaliers. 4th, the Philadelphia 76ers. 3rd, I have the Milwaukee Bucks. 2nd, I have the New York Knicks. And 1st, I have the Boston Celtics. And let me know in the comments below who you think will finish where, who's your favorite team, as I said earlier, and where you think they'll finish up. Are there any teams you're really excited to see that maybe aren't your own team? Let me know in the comments below. And if you didn't see my Western Conference video, be sure to go back and check it out as well. And let me know your thoughts on those standings as well. I try to keep this one slightly shorter than the Western Conference one. I kind of just have a tendency to ramble a fair bit, and so want to make sure I didn't do that too much in this video. But as I've said previously, I've got some more videos coming out. I've got my award predictions and my actual finals predictions coming out in upcoming videos, so be sure to make sure you subscribe to the channel so you don't miss those. And then if you also follow other sports as well, I've got some videos coming out talking about the LA Rams and their game against the Las Vegas Raiders, Liverpool's game against Chelsea as well. I'll be discussing that as well. So we'll be trying to cover all sports, and if there's any other topics you want me to cover just let me know in the comments below, and I'll be sure to try and check them out. But other than that, I'll let you guys get back to the rest of your day, and I hope you enjoy it.